À mercredi musique. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler de Julien Doré. Il est français. Il a étudié les beaux-arts, fine arts. Il fait beaucoup de reprises de chansons célèbres et il compose aussi. En plus, il est acteur. Il est l'artiste masculin de l'année dans les victoires de la musique en 2015. Couple of things that you're going to see in the song that I wanted to make sure you were aware of. So remember last time we talked about negative sentences with ne pas, making the verb sandwich. There are other negative expressions in French, like ne personne, ne rien, and ne jamais. You'll notice that there's no pas. The words personne, rien, and jamais replace the pas. Also, be careful of pronunciation. Sometimes students get confused with j'aime, which is I like, down at the bottom, and jamais, which is never. So jamais means never. J'aime means I like or I love. So quelqu'un is someone, personne is no one. So if I said quelqu'un frappe à la porte, is someone knocking at the door? No, nobody is knocking at the door. Personne ne frappe à la porte. So you can use personne at the beginning of a sentence to mean nobody. Il n'y a personne à la porte. There is nobody at the door. So the word order can go that way too. Tu veux manger quelque chose? Do you want to eat something? Non, merci, je ne veux rien manger maintenant. No thanks, I don't want to eat anything right now. So again, notice that the rien comes after the verb, just where the pas would go. So the verb sandwich, but instead of using pas, you're using rien to say nothing. Nous ne parlons jamais anglais en classe. We never speak English in class. Nous parlons toujours français. Notice that the toujours also goes right after the verb. So we never speak English in class. We always speak French. So you'll see these in the song. Leçon de prononciation, les verbes. So just making sure that you pronounce verbs correctly so that you are not misunderstood. Remember the boot? Notice my gorgeous artwork there. It's pretty impressive, huh? I didn't go study les beaux-arts like Julien Dore did, obviously. But I can tell you about verbs. So, je danse, tu danses, il, elle, elle danse, and il and elle danse. Everything inside the boot is pronounced the same. The verbs are pronounced the same. Danse, 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 danse. So you can only tell from hearing the subject, je, tu, il, etc., or from context, which form of the verb it is. The verb forms outside the boot, nous dansons and vous dansez, you do pronounce those a little bit differently. On and a, dansons and dansez. So that's what the boot means. So be careful. You're not going to pronounce the E on the end of danse if you say, I am dancing. The one little exception to that in terms of the boot not always working consistently is if you have a word that starts with a vowel and you have a liaison. So if I say, il aime, he likes, then I say, they like, ils aiment. The S carries over, the sound of the S carries over and makes a Z sound right there. That's called a liaison. Elle arrive, she arrives. Elles arrivent, they arrive. So you're never pronouncing that ENT at the end of the verb, but you can tell it means they because you hear that Z sound, so you know it's elles arrivent. Don't pronounce the final S on verbs and on most words in French, unless the next word begins with a vowel and you're doing liaison. Or there are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, don't pronounce the S on the end of a verb and never, ever, 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 ever pronounce the ENT on the end of a verb. Par exemple, voir is to see. Je vois, tu vois, il, elle, elle voit. Nous voyons, vous voyez, il voit, elle voit. So you're not hearing that ENT on the they form, and you're not hearing the S on the end of voir. Same thing with the verb mettre, which means to put or place, or mettre la table is to set the table. Je mets, tu mets, il met, nous mettons, vous mettez, elles mettent. So because there's an ENT on the end of that plural form, you hear the T or the T's in met, but you don't hear the ENT. Okay, so being very careful to pronounce those correctly is important. Now, just to make things interesting, usually you don't pronounce that E at the end of an ER verb. So, je parle, elle chante, j'étudie, il arrête. But in songs and in poetry, sometimes to add an extra syllable, you hear that E sound. Okay, it's also sometimes used for emphasis. So when I was living in Paris and the two little brothers in my host family were fighting, sometimes they would say, arrête, tu m'embêtes. So if you say arrête, normally you don't say that E at the end, but if you're emphasizing it, you might say arrête, or je ne parle pas français if you're really trying to emphasize the fact that you don't speak French, except then you just showed that you did. So in a song, sometimes they do pronounce that E at the end. And I'll show you what I mean when we get to the chorus of the song we're going to listen to today. The E at the end of a verb typically is going to rhyme with je, te, me, le, ne, and de if you are pronouncing it. So parle or je, that sound is the same. So let me show you what I mean. Here's the chorus for Barracuda, the song we will study today. So, dis-moi quelque chose. Normally, you wouldn't say the E on the end of chose, which means thing. But notice I underlined it for you to show you chose. When you hear it in the song, they're going to say chose, just to make the rhythm of the song work better. Dis-moi, so notice you're not pronouncing that S on the end of D because that's a verb and we don't pronounce S's at the end of verbs. Dis-moi quelque chose, the E on the end of quelque chose, same sound. Que je ne vois pas, so that E, actually the E in que is also pronounced the same as je and ne and quelque and chose. So those words that are in kind of that teal color, those all rhyme. Je ne vois pas, again, not pronouncing those final S's. Si le monde explose. So if I were just saying the world is exploding, hopefully it's not, then you would say explose, but because you have this song with a certain rhythm, you're going to say si le monde explose. Parle-lui de moi will also become parle-lui de moi. So parle, same sound as in de. And that's it. We're not going to go back and talk about Joyce Jonathan because that was last week. All right. Hope you enjoy the song. Merci. Au revoir.